Shields up, Ironbreakers. Rurikhan here, coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy XIV. This title was sent to me by Square Enix so that I could play it and tell you guys my thoughts on it. And it's been a game that I've kind of been keeping up with on and off pretty much since they did their whole re-release thing, because for those of you that don't remember, the original release of Final Fantasy XIV Online was actually pretty bad. The game was in a pretty poor state, and eventually they had to shut the whole thing down and make a whole new game on top of that, and kind of then re-release the game in the form of Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn. And it was actually quite the interesting story. If you guys ever feel like Googling that stuff up, I know that NoClip has a very, very interesting documentary on it, because it's just a very interesting story. I'm not going to get it too much in depth into that right here, but suffice it to say that this game had a very rocky launch. However, after the game did the whole Realm Reborn thing, I tested out the beta, I played it for a little while, and I was like, this looks cool. Eventually, A Realm Reborn came out, and I played that, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't get as deep into it as I probably should have at the time. And then eventually they came out with their first expansion, which was Heavensward. And again, I was like, oh, I'm going to try to get back into this. So I played some more Realm Reborn. I never actually got to Heavensward, I'm ashamed to admit, but hey, it is what it is. And then at some point last year, I decided, you know what? I'm going to give this game a real shot. I'm actually going to play this game, see all of the campaigns and all of that stuff, experience all of the story, do all of the raids, and I did all that. I did all of that stuff. I completed every single bit of story relevant content that was in the game. I didn't complete the crafter gatherer content, because this game actually has like specific quests and stuff that you do as a gatherer crafter, and it's not the boring stuff that you're thinking about. Well, I guess some of it might be considered boring. I don't know. I haven't done a lot of the craft and gatherer stuff, but a lot of people seem to really enjoy that. And there's just a lot of content in this game. There's a ton of content in this game. So why am I talking to you guys about it at this point in time? And why am I telling you that you really, really should play the upcoming free trial that they're going to be updating? So this game already had a free trial. It already has a free trial. You can play it right now, but the free trial limits you up to level 35. There's no time limit, so you can play for as long as you want, but you can only level up your jobs to level 35. Now, jobs, for those of you that are not aware, they're essentially classes. So like in Final Fantasy XIV, you can play any class that you want in the same character. So you can be like, oh, I feel like playing a tank, so you can play as a paladin. But later you're like, you know, I actually feel like playing as a DPS, so you can play as a dragoon. Or, oh, I actually feel like playing a mage or a healer or whatever. You can just swap your jobs. It's super easy, super streamlined, and you can just level up as many classes as you want. One character, you can level up all the classes, all the professions. You can literally do everything in the game with every single class in one character. And that's a really cool thing. And it's also very important because the story is pretty long. A lot of people will tell you, oh my God, the story, it's this and that and the other, and it takes a good long while. We'll get into more about the story. But anyway, as I said, right now there's a trial and you can go check it out. And it's, again, you can level all of these jobs that I was just talking about up until level 35. And then you actually have to go and you have to buy the game and all that stuff. But with the new trial, this is something that I think is completely insane, but basically you have access to the entirety of the baseline game, which is up until level 50, and then they also add on top of it their first expansion, which is Heavensward, and all of this is completely free. There's no time limits. There's a couple of limitations on your account, you know, in order to prevent botting and all of that type of jazz. They don't want a bunch of Chinese gold farmers flooding the market with gil and stuff like that. So some of the limitations in your account is like you can't trade items with other players, again, to prevent this whole botting situation and whatnot and screwing up the economy of the game. I'm not sure if you can, I don't think you can whisper other players either, so you can't send like private messages. But you know, you can always use Discord or something like that to contact your friends if that's something that you need to do. But other than that, you have access to the entirety of the content of the base game and its first expansion. And why is this so important? It is because the first expansion they ever did for this game, which is called Heavensward, is hands down one of the best stories that I've ever played in a video game. It is a fantastic story. And now you guys are, okay, so the story is good. What about the gameplay? Personally, I like the gameplay. You know, it is very much a tab targeting MMO, which I know it turns a lot of people off, particularly a lot of the people that watch me, because you're used to me just playing actions game like Souls and Monster Hunter and that kind of thing. And tab targeting MMO doesn't really fit in quite as well as the rest of my content, I guess. But do remember that I played a tank in World of Warcraft, which is a tab targeting MMO, for a long time, and it is something that I really enjoyed doing. You know, just playing a tank, going up into a dungeon with however many people you can get, which in the case of Final Fantasy XIV is 3 other people, and you're kind of like setting the pace for the dungeon and keeping aggro on mobs. Basically, your whole job is to take a beating for your team and try to dish out as much damage as you are taking that beating as possible, which is pretty cool. It's something that I still enjoyed. I got back into Final Fantasy XIV just last week because I hadn't played since then. And, you know, it was very easy to just get right back in there and start playing. Another really cool thing about Final Fantasy XIV is that unlike World of Warcraft, it is not specific to PC, and it does support crossplay. So you can play this on your PC if you want to. You can also play this on your PlayStation 4 if you want to. And I believe that soon you'll be able to play it on the Xbox as well, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's going to be a thing, which again comes highly recommended by me if you're on an Xbox and you're looking for a cool MMO to play. There's really no going wrong. This new trial that they're doing, which is going to come into play on the 11th of August, is also something where they are streamlining the story experience of the original game as well, which is A Realm Reborn, which whenever you look up the story of Final Fantasy XIV, you know, in terms of people's opinions on it, you'll get a lot of people saying, oh my God, there's so much filler at the end of A Realm Reborn, which I don't necessarily agree. I think, yes, there are a lot of quests at the end of Realm Reborn, but I thought that a lot of those quests were important in terms of developing the characters and stuff like that, but they said that they streamlined a lot of that to, you know, avoid player burnout and whatnot, because a lot of players do get burned out at the end of A Realm Reborn. They're trying to avoid that. So this patch not only extends the trial of the game to the base game as well as the entirety of the first expansion. Like, there's even content that you do after the credits roll that kind of leads you up into the next expansion. I don't know what the exact patch is that this thing ends up in. I'm sure that, you know, people that actually play the game are like, oh, it ends at this exact cutscene, because people really do love the story of this game. And we'll talk a little bit more about that without spoilers. But it's a ton of content. And a lot of you guys are going to be like, oh yeah, I don't know if I want to make the investment in playing like an MMO and the social aspects and the rating. There's so much commitment to it and all of this other stuff. And here's what I can tell you, right? I played through all of the campaigns of the game last year. And before I finished each of the campaigns, I would go and I would do all of the relevant raids. This includes Alliance raids, which is 24-man raids, which they actually do in a really smart way. It is all of the relevant trials that you have to do. I didn't do like the actual end game content, so like savage content, extreme content, you know, the harder stuff that requires you to be more on point with mechanics. I just did the base versions of the raid to get, you know, the storylines and all of the stuff that was happening. And after doing all of that stuff, what I can tell you is that it is fairly easy for you to do just about everything in the game without needing a group. Because the way that they do the mechanics of their systems and how they populate raids with people and stuff like that, they give end game players a good reason to run old content. Like, end game players are actually rewarded for running old content. So while there were a couple of raids that were a little bit harder to get into because there was not as many people playing at the time or something like that, I was still able to do all of the content. It's just some of the times I had to wait like half an hour for a queue or something like that. But I was still able to do pretty much all of the content, all of the dungeons, all of the stuff. Like, it's actually quite surprising because it's a super simple way of maintaining like a good, healthy thing going on your group finder. by rewarding players for doing it, by granting them additional experience if they want to level up, secondary jobs or something like that, by granting them tokens that allows them to actually buy endgame armor for doing some of the harder dungeons, stuff like that. Like it always seems that there's like a healthy player base around all of these activities that actually require a group for you to do. And sometimes it may take a little bit longer. Sometimes it may be a little bit faster. Like for instance, if you're queuing at like 3 in the morning, that's not going to be as easy for you to get a group as if you're queuing, say, at like 5 p.m. or something like that, right? Because there's a higher chance of people being there to do those events at those times. So most of this content can pretty much be experienced solo. Actually, all of this content can be experienced solo, so long as you do it at reasonable hours, and you will be able to populate your raids and stuff with other people. And you guys might be like, well, but then I'm not going to know the mechanics, and then people are going to shout at me, and I don't need the type of hassle. And let me stop you right there. Throughout the whole time that I played Final Fantasy XIV, there was one instance where one of my groups fell apart because somebody failed a mechanic. I'm not exaggerating. I have I think about 200 hours? No, it's more than 200 hours. I don't know exactly how many played hours I have of the game. It's probably more like 300. Doesn't matter. But basically, in all of those hours that I've played, I've had one group where I experienced the usual behavior. It's like, oh, we failed in one pull, quit, everybody leaves. And even that group, like 4 or 5 people stuck around, it filled back up and we went on to complete the entirety of the instance. Because the community in Final Fantasy XIV is a lot more accepting of newcomers. And I don't know why. I don't know what kind of secret sauce this game has that it just usually whenever someone is struggling, like someone in your group will be like, hey, listen, in this thing, here's the mechanic that you got to do. So next time, try to do it like this and, you probably won't have a problem anymore. Like even last night, we had someone who was playing a healer and he made a mistake. Like all of his gear was probably very close to being busted when he joined the instance, and then we wiped at one point, and all of his gear was broken. Literally all of his gear was broken. And the guy was like, hey guys, I think I have to quit because all of my gear is broken. I'm really sorry. I forgot to repair, yada, yada, yada. But basically everybody in the party, we just kind of had a conversation. We're like, dude, just equip some lower level gear. It'll be fine. So he just equipped lower level gear that was not optimal or whatever. But I was like, dude, I got raid gear. We'll be fine. And we did the boss just fine, and we completed the instance. So this community so far has been really positive, and I hope that the expansion of the trial doesn't change that, because, with the expansion of the trial, you're going to see a big influx of players that aren't necessarily paying to play the game. They're just coming in to check it out. And that might mean that there might be an adaptation period of people coming in, maybe even coming in from World of Warcraft, because as we know, people are super disappointed with the state of World of Warcraft right now. People are excited about Shadowlands, but the current state of BFA, to my understanding, is a complete garbage fest. But we're probably going to be seeing a lot of people from that community join in, and I hope you all are going to be on your best behavior now, boys. Otherwise, we're going to have problems. But anyway, this long story short, it's a lot of content. You should be able to do it. It's not a big deal. It's available on all the major not all the major platforms yet, but it will be available on all the major platforms. It will also be available on PlayStation 5 when that comes out, I believe. As a matter of fact, I think I heard something about Yoshi P saying that he's looking forward to optimizing the visuals a little bit better for the PlayStation 5 or whatever. So that'll be something that'll be cool to check out eventually when that happens. And I know what some of you guys are thinking. You guys are like, well, Ruri, that's all fine and dandy, but I don't want to sell my soul to this game and become completely addicted to the rest of my life, because the game's just going to drain all of the time that I have available to play, because that's usually what MMOs do. And that's where I find that the design philosophy of Final Fantasy XIV kind of changes from the design philosophy of something like World of Warcraft. To give you guys an example, I played World of Warcraft during the BFA launch, right? You guys probably remember that. I did a couple of videos about it. And I even raided during BFA launch. I did the first raid tier, completed all of the things in normal difficulty or whatever. I wasn't really going too hardcore into it. But we were getting into heroic raiding, I think, at some point. And, we're trying stuff out and actually progressing through heroic raids as well. I don't think we completed the first tier of rating for BFA and Heroic, but I don't remember. It's been a long time, right? So along that path, I've collected a decent amount of gear, right? If I was to go back to World of Warcraft this very moment, all of that gear is null and void. Like I can go do a world quest, which is something that takes me like 2 minutes, and an item will drop that will just completely obliterate any type of raiding gear that I might have. Because, that's just how that game is designed to be. It is designed to maintain you like on the wheel constantly, non-stop playing until your eyes bleed out, doing all of your weeklies and your dailies and your whatevers. And if you don't do it, you're going to not have enough Azerite power or whatever garbage resource they come up with next for Shadowlands. And if you don't have enough Azerite power, then you're behind everybody else. And then you got to grind more and grind harder and grind faster to see if you can catch up to everybody else. But it's an exercise in futility because everybody else is also grinding and doing their dailies and their weeklies and their monthlies and their whatevers to try and maintain that gear progression non-stop to make sure that they can keep up with the power creep in the game. And yada. Basically, the point being, like, if I log into World of Warcraft right now, my character is going to be a chump, right? I played the current expansion, but I stopped playing. Therefore, my character is going to be a chump. Whereas when I log back in to my Final Fantasy XIV character, he's still a pretty capable character. He's got a couple of pieces from like trials and a couple of pieces from raids that I did here and there. And he's still pretty well decked out. I mean, he's not top tier rating, whatever, and he doesn't have like the best of the best of the best, but the power creep, in my opinion, is not as noticeable in Final Fantasy XIV as it would be in something like World of Warcraft. It's not like I got back to Final Fantasy XIV, did one quest, and it's like, oh, this piece of gear right here just destroys any other piece of gear that I have. So the game is fundamentally designed in a way that's like, look, if you want to take breaks in between content patches, you should. As a matter of fact, I think there was even like at one point a fan was asking Yoshi P like, oh, I'm having a hard time staying motivated because I did all of these things and now there's no more content to do and I don't know what else to do. What should I do? And the developer, the leading developer of the game just straight up told him, you should take a break. Wait for the next content patch. It's not a big deal. Go play other video games. It's just a fundamentally different, a fundamentally different philosophy from World of Warcraft, where they don't want you to take breaks. They want you to like, dude, just play this game forever until your eyes bleed, grind until your brain dissolves into mulch. And I'm probably still going to play Shadowlands when that comes out because I'm an idiot. But, basically all of this is to kind of like explain to you guys why you should at least check it out. And I understand it's not going to be for everyone because it's not an action game like the type of games that I usually tend to play. It is a tap targeting MMO, and getting around the combat can sometimes be a little bit challenging. But what I can tell you is that the story will repay you tenfold. And I also like the combat. I actually find the combat in 14 more satisfying than in World of Warcraft, but to each his own. Some people are going to prefer one, some people are going to prefer the other one. The PvP is definitely better in World of Warcraft. There's not even that many people doing PvP in Final Fantasy XIV, which hopefully they'll eventually come up with some better stuff for PvP to get people more incentivized. I remember at one point I wanted to try out PvP and I couldn't even get a queue to pop on my server cluster, so that was kind of weird. But yeah, that's the other thing. You can like hop between servers, not server clusters though. That's going to cost you. But if you're like within a cluster, you can visit all the different servers whenever you want. So if you have friends on a different server, it's not really that big of a deal. And it's cool and it's very much worth it, particularly because of the Heavensward story. Like, look, when it comes to all of the stories within Final Fantasy XIV, it's very hard to be like, oh, this story is better than that one, because this whole thing is like one big cohesive story. And unlike World of Warcraft, they don't tell that story like outside the game. Like in World of Warcraft, if you want to actually know the lore, you have to go buy the books and you have to, watch. I don't even know how to get the story of World of Warcraft at this point. I can tell you what, a big chunk of it is not in the game. I can tell you that much, okay? The most important pieces of World of Warcraft story, they're not in the game. If you just play the game, you're gonna have no idea why a lot of characters are doing what they're doing, because that's being told in books that they want to sell you, in ebooks and whatever, right? Whereas in Final Fantasy XIV, you don't have to go outside the game. The whole story is told to you in the game, and that story is hella good. It is the high point of the game as far as I'm concerned. Like, I like raiding, I like dungeons, all that stuff is extremely fun for me, but the story itself is like one of the biggest highlights of the game. Therefore, even if you don't want to like buy into it, right? If you don't want to eventually get consumed by the sub fees and you don't want to buy the additional expansions, at the very least, play Heavensward. Like, play through Realm Reborn and then play Heavensward. And I personally also really liked Realm Reborn. It's not as good as Heavensward, but Heavensward is a fantastic story. Some people will tell you that it is one of the best Final Fantasy stories ever, period, which is really cool. Although Shadowbringers, in my opinion, is the best. As a matter of fact, if I was to rate them, it'd be Shadowbringers, Heavensward, Realm Reborn, and Stormblood. Stormblood, in my opinion, is hands down their worst expansion. Doesn't mean that it's terrible, but it was definitely a bit of a stopgap. Like, when I got the Stormblood, I had to take a break, which again is fine. You can take breaks in this game whenever you feel like it, which is pretty cool. But, you know, I just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware. Look, there's going to be a new trial. It's going to be coming on the 11th of August. And you should definitely check it out. This is the time where I would actually advise people, look, you should definitely check this out, because there's a ton of content. Like, you'll get easily over 100 hours of good content out of this game for free. And it's more than 100 hours. I'm pretty sure it's more than 100 hours, but at least 100 hours of really good content, a really good Final Fantasy story for free. And there's no reason for you not to check it out. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, hit the like button. If you did not enjoy it, hit the dislike button. Feedback is important. Feedback, which you can also leave in the comment section down below. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe, peace out.